Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan Emmett Pierce. This is a Ukraine war news update, second part thereof for the 10th of September 2024. This is a military aid and assistance video. It will be relatively short compared to my massive video this morning. A lot has happened overnight with these huge strikes onto Russian territory from waves of Ukrainian one-way attack drones. So hopefully make this a little bit quicker. My geopolitics video coming afterwards will be a long one though. Okay, so we're going to start with, it's all about the Dutch. They seem to be in the news quite a bit because of a couple of things. First of all, we recently delivered a radar for a Patriot system to Ukraine. In addition, we will be handing over 3 launchers very soon, according to the Dutch MOD. So that's really good news. That's part of that accumulated battery that the Dutch seem to be at the heart of. Kiev can use those components immediately because they will be integrated into the available Patriot systems. So excellent news that is being expedited. But this is the thing that was getting a lot of coverage. They are not the only nation that has stated things such as this. So the Dutch Defence Minister Brekelmans says the Netherlands permits Ukraine to use Dutch supplied weapons, including F-16 fighters, for strikes into Russian territory without range restrictions. He encourages other allies to adopt similar policies. Interview with FAZ on the 9th of September, he said that the Netherlands has also authorised Ukraine to do that. Quote from that is, Ukraine ramped up its efforts to secure permission from Western partners for deep strikes into Russia using Western supplied weapons after Russia's invasion of northern Kharkiv Oblast earlier this year. The US has permitted the use of short-range Gimlet rockets for strikes inside Russia, but not long-range ATACMS missiles. Currently, Germany remains hesitant to transfer its Taurus missiles, more on that later, to Ukraine, while Britain, France and the US supply Storm Shadow, Scalp EG and ATACMS, but maintain restrictions on strikes inside Russia. Although I think it's the Americans that maintain the strict restrictions on UK-supplied Storm Shadows. And indeed, this week, the news is that Keir Starmer and others are going to try and persuade the Americans to drop those restrictions. Anyway, as Euromaidan Press reports, the Netherlands don't supply long-range missiles to Ukraine, but the Dutch-supplied F-16 fighter jets can potentially carry cruise missiles such as a JASSM, not currently supplied to Ukraine, but it's looking like JASSM are going to be on the cards for the Ukrainians. But then which range missiles will they get, and will they be allowed to use them into Russia at all? And if not, then that's really restricting their usage quite considerably. When asked if Ukraine can use the Dutch supplied weapons for deep strikes inside Russia, Brekelmans said, quote, Ukraine is allowed to use our weapons on Russian territory to defend itself in accordance with the international law. Kiev has a right to self-defense, and if the country is attacked from border areas or from Russian airfields, then it can take aim at military targets. The same applies to enemy missiles. These can also be intercepted with our weapons over Russia. That's exactly the right explicit communication that you need from allies. Really good. Asked if Amsterdam has imposed any range restrictions, the minister clarified that international law is not restricted by distance. Quote, the right to self-defense does not stop 100 kilometers from the border, Brekelmans explained. The Dutch Defence Minister also confirmed that the same policy applies to the Dutch-supplied F-16 fighter jets. Quote, we trust that they will use the fighter jets in accordance with international law, and so far they have done so, he said, implying that Ukraine does not use the jets to hit civilian targets. The Dutch minister declined to provide operational details about the current use of F-16s by Ukraine, citing security concerns. However, he did mention that the next batch of air-to-air missiles and spare parts for the F-16s would be delivered soon. The minister said the Netherlands is encouraging other allies to lift their restrictions on weapon use. He suggested that if the countries are unwilling to remove all limitations, they could at least make exceptions for strikes against Russian military airfields or fighter jets amid Russia's escalated air attacks, including glide bomb strikes. Brekelmans emphasised the importance of allowing Ukraine to defend itself against Russian attacks, particularly highlighting the threat of glide bombs launched from fighter jets. He stated, quote, either we accept that Moscow can carry out its glide bomb attacks undisturbed, or we allow Kiev to defend itself. I can't see anything wrong with this approach. It seems utterly bizarre that particularly the US are saying you can't shoot at these planes, you can't destroy these planes that are throwing bombs at your military installations, your own military personnel and equipment, and also at civilians indiscriminately inside Ukraine. it's incredible that we are still arguing about these bloody restrictions. So yeah, that's going down well with lots of people reporting on that. So good on the Dutch. They have been one of the strongest advocates for Ukraine since wars began. And obviously there's that connection to the, it was the it's the Malaysian Airlines plane that was shot down over, or shot down by the Russians, by a Russian book in the 2014 onwards iteration of the conflict. Shot down by Russians, and that has remained a sore point for the Netherlands, and rightly so. And so they have been really strong supporters of Ukraine. And even with Geert Wilders coming into power at the head of the PVV, although he's not the Prime Minister, the Dick Schoof is the Prime Minister, and he's just visited Kiev. And indeed, Geert Wilders has just been in Kiev as well. And he is essentially more on the Russian side of things than Ukraine. He is recognizing the practicalities of not advocating for Russia in the present political climate. And it's really good to see him over in Kiev. So that's excellent news. I wonder if his opinions on Russia will change at all as his party is in coalition in government. We shall see. Anyway, moving on. According to Die Bild, this is German aid to Ukraine saying this, in addition to the delivery of a 3-digit number of Panzerhaubitze 2000 spare barrels to be delivered to Ukraine from 2024 to 2029, Germany is currently delivering a low single-digit number of Panzerhaubitze 2000 spare barrels to make some Ukrainian Panzerhaubitze 2000s who are out of service operational again. Okay, interestingly, so we heard probably was over a year ago actually, when Panzerhaubitze 2000s were first given to Ukraine as one of the first big bits of equipment, really decent modern equipment given to Ukraine. These are self-propelled howitzers that are supposedly one of the best in the world, etc., etc. The Ukrainians were using them so heavily that the barrels started getting into a bit of trouble. They were firing them at rates that maybe they weren't designed for, and it could be a weakness, therefore, of the Panzerhaubitze 2000, but, overuse. When you're in a war, you can't really overuse anything because you need to use these things all the time. As a result, the barrels were deteriorating, and there are evidently some Panzerhaubitze 2000s that are out of use, that are not firing because of barrel degradation. So it's really good news that the Germans are onto that and helping out with barrel provision. It's not just about providing the core pieces of material, but the particularly with tanks, the barrels, or the howitzers, the barrels that get used so much. Okay, Wild Hornets, that's a non-profit organization building drones, getting a lot of feedback from the front line, adapting their drones, making them really effective. And I think it's is it the Wild Hornets ones, or certainly some of them that are being used to drop thermite at the moment. Anyway, Wild Hornets said they have dispatched 400 kamikaze drones from their workshop just yesterday. You can imagine how many they produce in a year, and that's just one workshop. Really good. And in fact, if you want to support Wild Hornets, please do. I think that's a really good source for charitable donations. Wild Hornets, I'd very much advise helping them out. They are excellent. And in fact, I am due to speak to the guy that runs them, but he hasn't returned my WhatsApp messages, so I'm in contact with his contact, but nonetheless, we'll see. Okay, Ukrainian soldiers using a Steam Deck portable console, so I presume normally used for gaming, to operate an M240, that's a 7.62mm general purpose machine gun installed on a tripod. We've seen these before. The remote usage of some of these weapons, fantastic to see the innovation from these guys. And when you've got a really tech savvy population, you are going to get stuff like this. Okay, now we have Colby Badwa wading in on the whole Taurus, Storm Shadow, Scalp EG, JASM, cruise missile production issue. So the problem here is that, well, on face value, it looks like Germany UK and France have not been very proactive. So we have given, or in Germany's case, not given, we have given cruise missiles to Ukraine to use. These are incredibly useful, have pretty much all been used up, but we haven't ramped up production. In fact, the production is either shut down or mothballed. And people are wondering, look, what are you doing? Why didn't you 2 years ago start producing these at the levels that are needed? So that Ukraine has a consistent supply of these. And there are issues to do with, these missiles coming to the end of their lifespan, and replacement missiles supposedly coming online at some point in the near distant future. So Colby Badwa casts his opinion on this, take it with a pinch of salt, of course. Despite modest increases in European defence spending, a fundamental lack of interest in investing in key capabilities remains. European states can't buy European when no European-made products are even on offer. So this is probably pertaining to the European military strategy that says in Europe we are hoping to buy 60% European stuff when we are procuring equipment. So rather than going to the US and looking for cruise missiles, that's the sort of thing we should be building ourselves. But he goes on to say, well, Taurus production shut down, Storm Shadow production shut down, Scout PG production is on life support. If Germany, the UK and France don't even buy their own domestically produced systems in meaningful quantities, why would anyone else? So this then, doesn't bode well for selling that European stuff to other countries in Europe and outside of Europe. If Germany, JASM, so that's the American cruise missile, is a better capability at a better price, he claims. Germany, under Chancellor Scholz, is rejecting the entire category of long-range strike weapons. France is looking at sinking billions into developing a domestic multiple-launch rocket system and then procuring perhaps a few dozen units. These are not serious procurement policies. I think, to be honest, modern war should be thinking about these kind of weapons more than anything else. My opinion has long been for Ukraine that they will prevail in this war if they can destroy Russian capabilities without losing their own troops and equipment. And the way you do that is by sending missiles and sending drones. So it should all be about missiles and drones. Ukraine should be building the crap out of, they should be just mass producing cruise missiles and ballistic missiles and any kind of missile, precision guided munitions, and to some extent artillery and longer range artillery shells and better self-propelled guns, but also one-way attack drones and drones in general, which they're doing. They're doing all of this to differing degrees, but I just think missiles. Like the Ukrainians would really want to be hammering Novorossiysk at the moment and the ships that are sat there, and they want to be hammering Russian air bases with missiles. And if they're not allowed to use US missiles or even British and French missiles to do that, then they need to be creating their own, because that's how you win a war without losing troops. Now, at some point, you're going to have to march your troops over land if it's about land, right? But before you march your troops over these fields, you want to be destroying the capabilities of the opposition in terms of air defense, in terms of artillery, in terms of depots and ammunition and training facilities. And you do that with distance munitions. It should all be about that. So it is kind of bizarre that Europe is behind the game on this, it seems, at the moment. Although there is some comeback to what Colby Badwa is complaining about, and there are some interesting arguments in the threads below. I won't go into too much details, but you got someone saying, for example, Swedish RB-15 Mark IV is pretty capable. Previous models are in use in various countries around the world. Yeah, Colby Badwa says these and the NSN JSM are not in the same range or capability category as JASM. Taurus production in Sweden is just a question of time, and Sweden will probably order many hundreds. Colby Badwa says that would be a terrible idea. Taurus is too old to justify starting up a brand new production line, build a new missile. And that's the point, is that there needs to be a new missile, and there is a new missile on the way, but unfortunately it's in the kind of 2028 sort of time frame, which Colby Badwell would say it's just too late. You know what do you have now? Like 20, so here, misleading, new European cruise missiles are coming soon. Future cruise or the anti-ship weapon, go and look it up on Wikipedia. Colby says 2028 is not soon, and 4 years from now means it's not actually on offer. It's purely theoretical right now. And someone says back to him, sounds like what you really want is for Europe to put its funding into building a time machine so we can travel back in time and tell these countries to start development 5 years earlier. Barring that, I don't see what impact you expect to have on the decision made a decade plus ago. But the point here is that there's a gap. Like if that's not coming online until 2028, and you're not building, and you stop building the old missile, then you're just going to be dwindling your stocks down. What happens when there's a war and you need those missiles? And the problem is you've got a company that's probably in charge of this going, well, we're not going to ramp up production because that costs an absolute arm and a leg, and we're only going to do that if we get the orders in. So this is like kind of chicken the egg situation. Like, well, they're not going to make it if there aren't the orders in. And arguably, the country isn't going to give those away if they're not making them because they don't have the orders in. So, but it's down to the countries like it and German Defence Ministry and UK Ministry of Defence, but possibly then actually Olaf Scholz as the leader of the country to say, look, we need Taurus. You need to keep building them because we're going to give them. Okay, Taurus is maybe a bad example because he's afraid of the escalation idea there. But to go to France and UK, where we're fine with them using that. But like I said previously, I don't understand. Like a year ago, I said this a year and a half ago, why are we not building an absolute... I said that the UK should specialise building cruise missiles and let everyone else do some of the things we're doing. We're giving, I don't know, AS-90 self-propelled howitzers. Right, okay, someone else can worry about self-propelled howitzers. We're going to spend money on this, or maybe not that, but other money things, because there are old stuff that are going obsolete anyway. But other stuff that we're spending lots of money on, like say for example artillery ammunition. Like we've gone around the world, the UK has spent quite a lot of money on artillery ammunition. Well, actually, other countries could do that. That's not just the sole remit of the UK. So it could be right. All that money we're spending on artillery ammunition, you guys do that because we are and we are spending money on cruise missiles. The UK is just going to go missile crazy on supporting Ukraine, but of course that never happened, probably for good reason. My ideas are just some random bloke sitting in an office on the south coast of the UK, but we just haven't done that, and now there's this gap. I am pretty sure the Ukrainians have run out or have very low quantities of Storm Shadows. We're not seeing them used at the moment. They only have very few planes that can fire them, to be perfectly frank, but that can be changed, right? You've got F-16s coming online. I think Ukraine just needs an absolute ton of cruise missiles and the ability to fire them into Russia. And this argument about these missiles not being produced at scale at all is a relevant one. Big argument here somebody's saying, look, Taurus up to 1998 in different iterations, Storm Shadow 83 to 88, JASSM 1995, all aging, increasingly obsolete, being replaced with better. There are numerous recent cruise strike weapons developed within Europe and elsewhere in the Western Alliance. There's no shortage of more modern weapons. And Colby Badwell says the only modern option that is actually available is JASSM ER, extended range. Everything else is purely theoretical right now. Europe needs to keep existing missile production running while they develop new ones, which is what the US has done with JASSM. And I agree with that. All of these missiles are old, but they're pretty decent. They still do a job. Keep them being manufactured until you got the new one online. Don't have this gap and then a lack of cruise missiles being manufactured, so a lack of cruise missiles being in the hands of the Ukrainians. It's really frustrating. Anyway, moving on. So Dead District here says about Russian fiber optic controlled drones. So these are the drones that are not susceptible to electronic warfare because they're attached to 5 kilometer or even 10 kilometer spools of fiber optic cable, which means that you are controlling those drones. A spool of the cable goes out connecting to your controller, and electronic warfare can't do anything about that because you've got tangible cable connection. interesting here, and they are having an effect. We've seen them strike Ukrainian troops within like a warehouse type thing, so they don't need to be in line of sight. Normally you would lose radio contact with a drone if it went into a building like that. These can go in and hit troops inside a building because they're connected by fiber optic cable. So here though is pointed out that that's actually a Chinese drone, that the Russian manufacturer buying it with 2,000 US dollars is then selling it to the Russian MOD, by whacking on a fiber optic spool for $17,000. I mean, that is some serious markup, and this is actually one of the issues that the Russians are facing. So I showed you that Wild Hornets group just now, right? That's a non-profit organization that are producing an absolute ton of drones for Ukraine as a kind of moral obligation. They feel that they have to do that. So they're not about maximizing profits, whereas these guys, these kind of 2-bit Russian producers here, are taking Chinese drones and marking up the price by a phenomenal amount. But they are useful, they are doing a good job, but it just possibly also reflects the issue within the drone production domain. Right, doorbell went, and as you can see, my glasses have reacted to the sunlight, or lack thereof. I have no idea what I was talking about, so we'll move on to the next thing. Okay, Russian soldiers have released a video testing the analog-free ballistic vest model monolith produced by AO MPO Special Materials in St. Petersburg. During the experiment, it turned out that all 5 bullets penetrated the armor plate through and through. The military expressed dissatisfaction and the quality of the heavy and useless gear, quote, just awesome. Thanks, Ministry of Defense. However, the video never explained why disposable Russian soldiers need reusable bulletproof vests. Ouch. So this is not the first time we've seen this. We've seen bulletproof vests filled with wood, and etc. etc. So bulletproof vests have long been a complaint by Russian soldiers. They've done field tests themselves with their own kit, and it's been shown to be very, very poor. And in the final bit of news, the really good news here for the world and world security, North Korea will increase the number of nuclear weapons and bring them into full combat readiness, according to the lovely chap Kim Jong-un. He also added that the country faced a serious threat from the US-led nuclear military bloc in the region. Yes. Anyway, that's enough from my military aid video today. I'll get on with my geopolitical video, which, as I say, is fairly substantial. Take care. Speak soon. Toodle pits.